when we talk about production or we talk about consumption and the demand curve, for example, like that, I want to just kind of talk just a little bit for a few minutes about how that matches or doesn't match with reality. The time-lapse photography that I showed you in the last two pre-sessions before the class began is our actual production processes that we can watch and visualize and see. But what we're doing in class is, of course, very different from that. We're not getting anywhere close to the complexity of production that's being displayed in those particular videos. And in fact, we're reducing the production process and the consumption process to a couple of simple diagrams or curves. When we do that, we are simplifying the world tremendously, of course. So much so that we're actually kind of stepping away from what happens in actuality in the real world. So I can remember when I was first taking economics and you start being presented with things like a demand curve, like cost functions like we did last time in class, and you've got a U-shaped average cost curve and an upward slope marginal cost curve. And today we're going to talk about how a firm might maximize their profits by setting marginal revenue equal marginal cost and so forth and so on. But an obvious question that one might have learning this or seeing this for the first time is, do firms actually do this? Do they go out and figure out, for example, if you're a tomato producer, you might want to know, well, what's the demand curve for tomatoes look like in the markets that I'm selling in? And you might imagine that somebody in the office in these firms are keeping track of what the demand curve is, and they're keeping track of their cost functions and their cost curves, and they're trying to find out how to maximize their profitability in the context of that. But in actuality, if you go to individual firms, you're not going to find that they have a demand curve per se. And the reason for that is, think about what a demand curve is telling us. It's telling us all the different quantities that would be demanded at a whole range of potential prices that might exist in the market. And I use the word might exist because most of the time those other prices don't exist or maybe have never existed. So for example, if you're thinking about selling tomatoes in the marketplace and you want to know what the demand curve is, the demand curve would say, well, suppose the price of tomatoes is, $20 per pound. What would be the demand in the marketplace? In actuality, nobody knows what the demand would be at a price of $20 because the price has never been $20 and we've never been able to see exactly how much demand would occur at that particular price. Right? So we don't really have a demand curve fully specified out at all different prices and all different quantities. What producers do have is they might have some observations around the equilibriums. That is, they know what market demand, you go out and do a little bit of research and you find out, well, how many tomatoes are being sold in the marketplace today? What is the total supply and demand currently? What's the current price? So you've got some observations of current prices, maybe current levels of overall production. Maybe there's been some fluctuations in the price over the last few years, and you could use that to try to kind of tease out a little bit about what the relationship is between prices and quantities. And economists, of course, can be hired to do some sophisticated analysis to try to figure out, well, what would the demand curve look like? Or in particular, what economists would try to do is measure things like the price elasticity of demand and try to get some sense of the sensitivity of prices, quantities to changes in prices in the area at which the current prices actually exist. All right, so I'm going to stop with that reality check, if you will. But I just want to sort of bring it up once, and I might bring it up again throughout the semester, so that you recognize that what we're doing in economics is kind of a bird's eye view, if you will, of the way manufacturing or production works and how that matches with the market and with the consumer demand for the product. We're speculating about how relationships would work if we could measure them accurately or precisely, for example. And we're introducing concepts about production, for example, in a general sense, like that there's likely to be increasing returns to scale in early stages of any production process. So we put that into our assumptions. And we expect that there's likely to be decreasing returns to scale in later production levels. Now, where's earlier and where's later and where's the minimum? Well, that's going to vary from firm to firm, of course, and it would be a little bit difficult to measure and figure that out. But it's what firms are kind of trying to grope towards. We would expect that a firm that's successful, that's making profits and making money, is going to sort of conform to this bird's eye view that we're presenting about how production works and how it comes together with consumer demand and so forth and so on. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this. We're presenting a sort of conceptual understanding, and again, I like this term, this kind of bird's eye view. We don't see all of the details that are going on in production. And by virtue of that, we're assuming away a lot of that complexity so that we can kind of see how things work in a larger sense. All right, so that's just a little bit of an aside that I wanted to highlight for all of you.